Hi, I'm a former higher ed CMO, and I have a confession to make. I think parents are as important an audience for higher ed as students are. And I know you've heard me talk about this before, but I guarantee you haven't heard all of the insights that come out in this episode. I was so excited to talk with Jeff Kallay, who is the Senior Vice President of Enrollment Consulting for Echo Delta, about how we can do a better job making parents feel seen in the college search process and honestly beyond. Many listeners probably already know Jeff. He is a nationally recognized authority on campus visit experiences and student recruitment. Over the course of his career, he has worked with more than 300 college and university campuses across the country to create compelling visit experiences. He's also really passionate about how we interact with and outreach to parents and families and supportive caregivers of our students. I found this conversation to be one of the most delightful I've had on this show, and I hope you enjoy it as well. You're listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, the podcast where marketing minds in higher ed come to pull back the curtain, spill a little tea, and talk honestly about what it takes to market in this industry. I'm Jaime Hunt, the founder of Solve Higher Ed, author of Heart Over Hype, and a former campus CMO who spent more than 2 decades navigating the weird, wonderful world of higher education marketing. This show is for the strategists, the storytellers, the change agents, and anyone who has ever tried to get Faculty Senate on board with a rebrand. Here we get candid about the challenges and share the ideas that are shaping the future of our field. Sound like your kind of conversation? Then let's get into it. I'm so happy to be here with you today, Jeff. How are you today?
I am waking up and doing pretty well every day, better and better. Thanks, Jamie.
Good. It's Monday for listeners and also for my producer, who's probably going to be like, oh my gosh, why is Jamie recording on a Monday? She's going to be even worse than usual. But here we are on a Monday, and you're probably not listening on a Monday. This is a very exciting introduction to a podcast, everyone. Well, I am super excited to be talking to Jeff because we were talking about parents. And I won't shut up about how important I think parents are in the college search process, which is not something I would have said. I'm going to mumble indistinctly about how many years ago it was that I was searching for colleges, but over 30. I would have not said parents were important. Sorry, Mom. But I think they're super important now. And I would love to hear from your perspective, Jeff. First, why do you think that they have become so important in the college search process?
Thanks, Jamie. It's great to be here again. Appreciate it. I think it is the generational evolution, right? Like when you just said 30 years back, I'm border cusp baby boomer Xer and love my parents, Rich and Janet, but I wouldn't say they were engaged hands-on. I was not best friends with them, right? They were my parents. They made it inevitably clear I lived in their home, drove in their cars, listened to their music, right? And they were supportive, and they always told me I was going to go to college as a first generation. Shout out first gen. But you know, they didn't take me on college tours. So my take is when baby boomers became parents of millennials predominantly, as baby boomers have done everything in America just by sheer mass and by winning the birthplace lottery. That's my bitter Gen Xer. And they became that attached helicopter best friend parenting. And I also think many of them went to college. So I think it just became a norm that this co-purchasing unit then began invading higher ed, which is the language I use when I talk about those early aughts of the millennial invasion. And I think it hit a lot of colleges just blind and, slapped them on the face. There were no parent associations. And then I think faculty and staff still say to me that like they act like parents don't exist still to this day. When I'm like, no, parents are driving this. So to me, I think it has been a generational shift, and that higher ed is still yet to wake up to and embrace.
And it's kind of stunning. And on many levels, in part because we've been talking about these helicopter parents, snowplow parents, for almost as long as I've been in higher ed, which is
Correct.
since 2004. So we've known for like 2 decades that parents are playing a really big role in their kids' lives. But why do you think we're doing such a bad job at engaging them with that same intentionality as we engage students? Because I still talk to people who aren't even collecting the email addresses of parents.
What's that say, right? Okay. I,
Right.
I think it's hubris. Well,
Mm,
right, perception and reality change, but I think it's just the hubris of the academy. I think it goes back to parentis locus and alma mater, right? Nourishing mother, soulful mother, mighty mother. We're as an institution better than your parents, or we're going to take your
mm,
young mind and forge it. So I think there's a little bit of arrogance in it and view the parent as an enemy, not
mm.
as a friend, or view the parent as a paycheck, or not a paycheck, right? As a payment processor, not as a partner and collaborator, excuse me. And so that I hope that answers that question.
Yeah.
We have to do better.
Yeah. No, I just worked with a client this fall on building out a parent engagement strategy specifically geared towards getting them over the finish line, so yield and anti-melt, and then persistence and retention. What more important person is in a student's life to get them to stay in college, persist from semesters to semester, than the person who's paying the bill? I mean, and parents want to. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who has a son in preschool, and she's like, I get so much communication from my son's preschool. Do you think that, and that's going to continue, everybody all the way through high school? Why do you think it's just going to stop? They turn 18 and I'm just going to turn off the interest?
And I think that's part of it. But let me go back in defense of the institutions, right? We're all older. We're like finally, silent, I think, are pretty much gone. My parents' generation. I'll still, when I present about generations, I'll say, who's a baby boomer identifies? And those numbers have gotten smaller and smaller. But then I think we Xers who were raised to be hardcore individualists, absentee parents, that type of thing, I think that we're transferring our lens to that. So I think some of that is on us, right? We just raised ourselves, so we're just going to kind of think that way as an institution. But I'm excited for the next cohort and coming at us in the way of parents and grandparents.
Oh my gosh, right. We can't, and we're talking parents here, and listeners, I want to be really clear. It's parents and family.
Yeah,
Um,
that supportive adult, right? I know.
yeah.
I always like to qualify that too.
Yeah, I think we make a mistake if we just speak as though we're only speaking to the person who is the biological parent of the child. There's so many different types of families, kids raised by grandparents, kids raised by siblings, kids raised in different environments. So I think we need to be sensitive to that. I would love to hear from your perspective. What kinds of messaging or moments are the most effective at activating the parent support between, everything from visiting campus, submitting a deposit, staying enrolled?
So let me first talk about the campus visit, because that has been my life for the past 2 decades, to be the champion of the campus visit, as well as being, a campus visit expert, experience economy. I think as someone who registers for a lot of campus visits, even if you look at the registration process, it doesn't ask who's registering. We have our hunches that probably 80% of campus visits are the registration is completed by that supportive adult. And I'm going to gender stereotype. It's probably the more paternal, nurturing mom or mom figure that does that. And campus visit registrations act like parents don't exist. They don't
Mm-hmm.
ask who's coming, who's registering. They don't ask for a parent's phone number or email address. So I think it even starts there. Then we get to campus, and as someone who tours 3 to 6 campuses a month and is paid to observe and watch this, you just watch the body language and listen to the language from the student worker greeting you at the desk, or the admissions counselors, or they act like the parent literally is not there.
Wow.
Right. So one of the, it just, everything is directed at the student. And then to the point, say there's a group introduction before tour walks, and it's always, and I need all the students to say their name, hometown, and major. And then the tour starts to walk. And who's the very first person to ask a question? The parents.
Yep.
And so we train guides to acknowledge why are Gen X parents angry at at higher ed? Because we act like they don't exist. So for me, to answer your question, the simple thing is acknowledge that they're there, engage them. So for us, it's, and who did you bring with you? Right.
Mhm.
So I tell a quick story. Western Michigan University, go Broncos. I love the Mac. Get some action.com. So we trained our guides to do all of that. We go back a month or two later, big group, watch the tour guide, and can you say who you brought with you? So this young man walks in, he goes, "Hey, I'm Connor. I'm from Lansing, and I'm going to major in gaming. And I brought my mom." Right. And it was hilarious. The mom literally, she walks into the group and she just took over. She goes, "Yes, I am his mom and I have a name and it's Janet," right? She wanted to be seen. She wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
And so that to me is the very first thing. And then to me, I think it's looking at the language of our marketing. It's looking at our website. It is training admissions counselors on the family dynamic. And again, using family in that supportive way of how to engage across the generation. So to me, it all starts with awareness and just recognizing the humanity that is involved in this.
Well, and sending your kid off to college, particularly if they're going away to school or if they're going out of state or they're going some distance, they're going to live away from home. I mean, that's a big deal, right? Like these are your babies that you're sending out into the world feeling like, are they fully formed? Are they ready for this? And I will say, as a Gen Xer who had a lot of independence, whose parents probably didn't know where I was a lot of the time, I was able to be a very independent person at 18. But I'm not sure that 18 is 18 in terms of my experience.
And I think in our fourth turning crisis, right, that our country has been in and is in, I'm a big fan of Howe and Strauss. I just repeat their generational knowledge. And Neil Howe's book, The Fourth Turning is Here, just spoke to me. There's that intro about how we've just turned into our families as a way of support during this crazy time when institutions are just eroding and decaying. So yeah, acknowledging the family is important. And your 18 is different from a Gen Z 18.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I traveled to Europe by myself at 18. Like
Right.
when I think about my nephew or my niece, no, I'm sorry, no.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. By myself. What were my parents
Hey,
thinking?
but that went different times, right?
Mhm.
Your parents wanted you to go have that experience.
Right. I
It's
remember
us.
my mom said, "We were nervous about it, but you were 18. What were we gonna do?" Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Good question. I want to pivot a little bit because
Sure.
I think that we automate so much for how we communicate with students, and it's natural that we want to do that probably with parents' engagement. But how do you balance that automation with being authentic and making them feel actually seen so that Janet, has a name and a personality and her own, unique set of questions?
I mean, when I came back to higher ed after being an admissions counselor, moved to Atlanta in the 90s during that Olympic, and Atlanta was the fastest growing city in America in the 96 Olympic Games, and was working at agencies and came back to Mindpower, higher ed marketing agency, but then saw the need for the campus visit and launched it at Target X, right? I think I was like number employee 8 or 10 at Target X.
Wow.
Oh yeah, people. I mean, and everyone forgets Target X was not the Salesforce-based CRM that it is. It's Brian now started it to send emails to prospective students back in the late 90s, but launched campus visit consulting there. It was all about the humanity, and I've never heard, having asked tens of thousands of college students, why did you choose this school? Right. And inevitably it came down to, I visited campus and it felt right. Meaning, I think anthropologically, I saw my people, my tribe, my posse. This was my place, right?
Mhm.
They never said, oh, it was some technology. Oh, it was some that, right? It is that human connection. So that's where I think I'm trying to answer this question of that technology, that automation should support the humanity. And I think we're so caught up in the automation right now and in the technology. And I think the way, technology is where private equity and venture capital money is. And you definitely see that invasion into this space. And so I think that the key to me is, how does that automation prompt human moments?
I love that.
And how are we prepared and trained to be human in those moments?
Yeah. This wouldn't be Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO in 2025 if we didn't talk about AI and the impact on that. And I often argue that using AI to streamline some parts of our work allows us to have greater intentionality and greater, hopefully, face time, greater one-on-one, greater, person-to-person communications. I'd love to see your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I would hope so. But then again, two-part answer. My co-founder of Render Experiences, Trent Gilbert, now is heading vice president of search at Carnegie, which I say Carnegie because I'm from Pittsburgh. But he says that we just have kept adding on and on and on in the world of enrollment marketing, right? We had publications, and then we needed websites and chat, and now AI chatbots, but we're still doing publications and college fairs, right? We haven't edited out. So we think there's that. Let's really take a look at this. But I think that social media, right, which all these things that were supposed to connect us technology wise, if we're not careful, have in fact disconnected us to the discourse and the lack of civility and the hyper divide we're in as a people. And so I don't know that we're not pausing to take that time that AI gave to us to create those human moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we just go on and create more technology moments. I watched Mountainhead on HBO this weekend, which if you haven't, you want to talk about AI? It is it's fiction. Steve Carell, 4 fictitious tech billionaires gather up for a retreat in one of their, $100 million mountain homes. And one of their AIs creates a global pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
And one of them says, this is the opportunity to create a post-human world.
Wow.
So for me, I love technology. It makes my life easier. I'm glad I can see you on my screen and we're having this. Would I love to be in a studio face to face with you? Absolutely. Because what happens is when you and I log off, we're going on to other things. If we were in a studio, we would have chatted, hugged it out, walked out and had some conversations along the way. So I'm saying all that to say, it's why I was so, as an extrovert, like the pandemic was just tough for me as it was for all of us. But like virtual conferences, like those weren't fun. There were no hallway conversations. There, you leave a session and you chat with someone or so. I guess for me, as long as we're as vice presidents of enrollment and as of marketing, is all of this an end game to create those human moments that, and there's all kinds of ways to go to college or not. And I'm very much committed to that place-based experience. So I just want to bring a little bit more of that place back. I don't know that I answered your question.
No, I think you did. And I think when I think about a session that I did last month at the Engage Summit, which was the AI Summit, and I talked about how we need to keep that empathy in the recruitment process and that we can use AI to do some things, but we can't erase people and we can't erase those human connections. And I think that we need to have even more intentionality than ever before in keeping that empathy embedded into our work. And, I write about that in my book a lot. I actually don't talk about AI at all in my book, even though that's a big part of what I do as a consultant, because I just think it's a tool that we should be using, but it's not the solution. The solution, I think, is empathy. The solution is being able to see from the other person's perspective, understand what they need in that moment, and give them the thing that fills that need in that moment. And that can really differentiate an institution from these very like chat GPT written facsimiles of emotion. Not saying that you can't use ChatGPT to write, but if you're literally just copy pasting out of ChatGPT into your Conflow, you're failing. You're not doing it.
So appreciate that word empathy. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's essential, and I think in a world that's getting ever more driven by empathy or by AI, empathy can be a big differentiator, and schools need to be thinking about that. So
It's
yeah, what's your perspective on like if an institution's listening to this and says like, okay, we really need to get a parent engagement strategy off the ground. Where would you say they should start?
with our current parents.
Mm,
A really deep dive, I would say, in both quantitative and qualified, right? I think in both left and right brain, like let's really look at who are our parents right now and find out who they are and survey them and talk to them and find out what they love about your school, what they don't like about your school, what you can do to do better, right? Know that parent audience you have right now, because that's going to tell you in a way who's a best fit family for you. And
mhm,
it is then going to give you the data set and the framework and the talking points then to translate that into your marketing message and conflow to prospective families. I think that there's this meaty middle of best fit students and forget about, and I think we tend to concentrate on the fringe, but you just want to find more like-minded allies of parents. So do a deep dive into your current parents and ask good questions and tough questions, and do it digitally and do it in phone calls and do it in person. And that's the advice that I would give, is know who your best fit parents are.
in my experience, parents are dying to tell you. Like
Yes,
they
they
want.
are.
Yes.
And we don't give them the forum for that.
Mm-mm. No,
We
I'm in a
really
couple.
act like they don't exist. My colleagues and I, when we've audited and accepted student events, we've shared, we eavesdrop. So we hear it all, right? And we hear parents on the side telling each other how to get around the Privacy Act, right? How to do because I think that they don't, Gen X doesn't trust institutions. I mean, we as Americans don't trust institutions anymore. Gen X was just the original, right? Because all those institutions failed and bailed
Mhm,
on us. And so back to empathy, I think with empathy comes trust. And
mhm.
higher ed needs to have more empathy for parents. We treat them as the enemy, not the ally.
That is so absolutely profoundly true. Like I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in with people where it's like, oh, parents.
Parents, that is exactly it. Oh,
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I talk about that in my book too, but you can't be empathetic without listening and truly hearing what they have to say. And some of that listening can be a little covert, like be in your parents' Facebook group. I've been in a couple parents' Facebook groups for years and I literally go in probably 4 times a week. Just what are parents talking about today? What are parents' concerns? How are they talking about the institution? How are they talking about the questions that are happening at this phase in a student's journey? What are the freshman parents saying? What are the advice that senior parents are giving? That's a great source of just covert excavation. And then I guarantee you, if you had whoever leads your university's parent Facebook page say, "Hey, we want to do some focus groups," you would have too many parents
I
to do.
completely agree. And we work through this with tour guides and ambassadors, right? Who's asking all the questions? Parents. What are the most frequently asked questions? Is it safe? How safe is it? And
Mhm.
that safety that's everything. That's from food allergies to gender to sexuality. I mean, it's everything, right? And we try to get our clients to say, listen, you have to operate in the basis of Maslow's hierarchy. You have got to put out the basics first, right? Like, I have overprotected my child in the chaos of the 21st century, and now you want me to turn them over to you? And I think that we come in with these higher, we're going to transform you and evolve you, and all of this, when I'm like, the where parents are the most engaged on a campus tour is on safety, housing, and food.
Right.
Questions of, are we going to see the counseling center?
Yeah.
And again, we're not listening. We're not saying to parents what matters to you. So I get why parents are mad at us. I go on campus tours and it's a joke. Like, and it's also Gen X, but I'm like, what I try to remind everyone is, the Heathers, if you know that reference, right? The Gen X Mean Girls. Like, I always tell tour guides, here's some movies you want to watch if you want to understand today's parents that are predominantly from Gen X, right? Watch everything by Spike Lee, watch everything by John Hughes, and watch the Heathers, right? And they all know Winona Ryder from Stranger Things. And I'm like, the Heathers are now touring campuses as moms, right?
Yeah.
And then and they bring that, and the dads are Ferris Bueller, right? They're trying to trip up the institution. And so, stop treating parents as an enemy and bring allies, and ask them. We don't ask them.
So what mistakes are universities making? I mean, honestly, I feel like there's probably a long list.
There really is, right? I think it goes back to that word that I use of hubris, that we're better at it and we're smarter at it. We're smarter than you, parent, and not just the basics from what is the navigation of your website. How are you presenting what it is families want to know? And then I think it's also just not celebrating that prospective family or current family. We can't wait to get rid of parents at orientation. Instead of figuring out, how do we celebrate them? How do we make them our partner? How do we make them our ally? So I think maybe the bigger question here is I'm all for the Higher Ed Privacy Act. Like, I get it. But I wonder if it is part of the problem.
Like, we're too cautious about engaging parents because of it.
Yeah. Is it outdated? Does it need to be addressed? Right. And again, for turning, things are changing. I'm not a policy person, but I think the Privacy Act just immediately puts up a wall. And again, as I said, parents know how to get around that wall because we're Gen X. If we don't like what you said, we're going to find a way around you, because that's just what we've been doing our whole life. So for me, I think the biggest mistake is, as of a collective unit, we've built a Berlin Wall.
And that's another Gen X.
Hey, Gen Xers get that.
Yeah, right.
But we default to it.
Yeah. I mean, because you don't want to violate FERPA, right? Like, that's a federal act, right? But, there has to be a better way of engaging with parents safely within the bounds of that. And I would have to say, it's been a while since I've talked to a university that has no parent portion of orientation in the last couple of years. I would say maybe even 5 years ago that there wasn't as much, but the depth and shallowness of that engagement really varies.
Let me also say, though, we as an enterprise, most parents are like, wait, they're not aware of FERPA. Wait, I'm paying the bill. We don't even do a good job educating them. That here's this law, but here's how we're going to work together. So back to, what are schools doing wrong? Not even educating parents on how it works.
That's a good point. I mean, it should be very clear on the family landing page or whatever. This is what will limit your ability to get some of the answers that you want. And this is what you need to do with your child or with the student you're supporting to be able to get around that. And just be right out of the gate with what that is and how you need to work with your student. So excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up. So let me ask then, when you talk about tours and orientations and the intentionality of engaging parents in those, what have you seen that actually works?
I think that it's all about where we're at in the funnel, right? And I think the funnel, like everything else in our world that's in chaos and change and crisis, right? The funnel's got to change. More families have delayed campus visits. I think there was this traditional with baby boomers and millennials, and I'm just going to say predominantly middle class and upper middle class white, right? Who could afford to go to a spring open houses, right? Let's do 11 campuses on spring break and then come back in fall and test drive the ones we want to apply, and then let's go to 3 accepted student events. Well,
Mm-hmm.
who has the time or money for that now, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
now it's like, let's see if you get in and how much money they give you, then we'll go visit.
Yeah.
So we're wrapping our head around that new campus visit funnel. So for me, it is all the little things, Jamie. It's if I pull up to a small private school and they have the customized parking sign, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but it's like Jaime Hunt and family,
Mm-hmm.
Jaime Hunt and guest, right? Even then you walk in the sign, right? And we're so excited you all are here. I think it's intentionality and pronouns. And like for me, when most of my life has been in the South, right? I believe y'all and all y'all are the most inclusive of the pronouns. So I think it is those very little things. And then you go into an information session and it speaks to both.
Mm-hmm.
And then the tour guides are speaking to both. And those things are being heard. So I think it's when there is let me pause. Most of the time when we begin working with campuses, the campus visit is being crafted for everyone except prospective families,
Wow. Yeah,
right?
that resonates.
It's being crafted for the board or the president
Mm-hmm.
or our competition down the road or faculty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being guest centric of who is coming to visit
Mm-hmm.
and how are we marketing and speaking to them. So for me, it is a lot of little things. I will tell you, we have seen so many accepted student and parent panels go really bad, like
Mm.
angry and shouting. So I want to know the why, and I want to create a guest centric culture. But then back to your point of empathy. Empathy is acknowledging, listening, and responding.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're talking about, this guest-centric experience, makes me think about when I was at Winston-Salem State, the chancellor brought in the Disney Institute, and he sent hundreds. We had like 3 days of workshops or whatever, and he sent hundreds of employees through that training because he's like, this is the experience that students are comparing their experience at college with.
And
And
that is the key. They're not, this is a generation, right? I love Disney Institute, right? Be Our Guest, the book. Everyone should read it. But for me, on the generational role, I'm impacted by two authors, Howland Strauss in the generations world, but Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore in the experience economy world, right? They're seminal Harvard Business School Press book, 1999, The Experience Economy, that America's economy went from agrarian to industrial to service and technology. And then the late 90s began to shift to experiences. We don't want stuff, we want memories. And so, yes, this is a generation raised in the experience economy. If there
Mhm.
are 338 billion versions of a Starbucks latte, why can't I get the campus tour that I want? Why
Yeah.
can't I get the information on the website that I want? If I can design my own American Girl doll and my own Build-A-Bear, why can't I do this in college? So we still think that they're viewing us in the lens of other colleges when they are comparing you to Disney.
Yeah. And the experience that you have in these places and the environment and how it's all set up for you as the guest. And
The
that's really
aesthetic.
how we should be seeing it. They are guests on our campus.
Correct. Circling back to your question is when we acknowledge that they're guests, and within that unit is a lot of different guests.
Right.
And so for me, that's what AI should be doing, right? AI should be finding out who is our guest and then, sending messaging customized and personalized to them, right?
Yes.
This is what we always talk about. Like for 20 years, we've been saying own the car ride.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to Disney, you go to and I grew up in Central Florida. So I have been to Walt Disney World 150 times. So it's warped my psychology. It's why I do what I do, right? But, if you think about that car, if you think about while you're in line at a Disney attraction, they begin the narrative, they begin the storytelling, right? Well, why isn't AI sending me 3 or 4 small podcasts to listen to for the car ride to campus?
Yeah.
And why is the staff not using AI better? Nothing offends me more than when a family is asked or a student is asked over and over again, what's your name, hometown, and major?
Right.
Are you kidding me? You made me fill out a massive form on Slate or Target X or Salesforce. You have all this data. And then I come in and you make me fill it out again. And then a tour guide walks in and says, okay, everyone. Like, no, you use AI to know all that data, to be more human, trying to connect the dots of our conversation, Jamie.
I love that. And I'm thinking about a project I'm working on right now where I'm like building very granular personas for this audience, because the messaging that's going to resonate, this is for people who have dropped out of college without finishing their degree and getting them to come back. The people who dropped out a year ago, that messaging needs to be wildly different than the one that dropped out 10 years ago. And the reason and how far along they were in their journey. If they're one semester shy, that's a different message and a different solution than someone who dropped out after their first year. And so you can't have this one size fits all. And you make a great point that this is where AI can be really transformative in allowing you to make it so that every individual who gets communications from your campus is getting something unique to them.
Correct. And in some way, informing who they're engaging with.
Yeah.
Right. In my dream world, there is some AI and it's going to our watch or our smart lenses or whatever, right? That as if family goes across campus who they engage with, right? It pops up. This is Jamie. She's from, right? That's to me what technology and AI should do to forge more human connections.
Is it bad that I'm picturing Clippy as being the little thing that pops up? I don't think we want to bring back Clippy. I know, right? So Gen X. This has been such a great conversation. Where can people find you if they want to, follow you, chat with you, all the good stuff?
Well, I shut down all social media back in 2016, except for LinkedIn. So simple Jeff Kallay, Kallay. So I'm on LinkedIn, fair amount, mainly showing travels to campus, but trying to educate some on the experience economy, and at echodelta.co and Jeff at echodelta.co. This
has been so great. I've enjoyed every minute in this conversation. Listeners, as you know, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt, Jaime. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Named after the Bionic Woman, if that gives you a Gen X cred here. You can also find me on my website, solvehighered.com. And you can find my book if you're interested in learning more about how to embed empathy into your work, heartoverhypebook.com. And until then,
interrupt and say, an homage, she had her bionic ear. And you're a great listener, Jamie. So there's some thought behind that name.
I love that. They pretended, Mom's listening and she's going, no, he didn't. They pretended on my dad's deathbed, he confessed that they said they named me after him. And then my dad was like, but it was really the Bionic Woman. Like, cool, I'll accept it. Yeah, awesome. Well, listeners, as always, let's go bust some silos. Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where Higher Ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and contact drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for Higher Ed. Learn more at element451.com.